I'm Bevan with Global Cast Resources. So missions mobilization, missions advocacy is actually more than recruitment. Now, there's nothing wrong with recruitment. Man, what a privilege and a joy it is when you find somebody who's ready to do something. They want to pray, they want to give, they want to go, they want to welcome the nations coming into their city. All of that is great. And when you have the privilege of helping them step into it, oh, that's amazing. And yet, what we're up to, what we're trying to accomplish is not just individuals to come and step into their role and maybe join our programs, but to see the whole church bring the whole gospel to the whole world. And so missions mobilization is not just recruitment, it's this long-term process of shifting worldview in people's lives in the body of Christ, so that in the long run there is plenty of giving, praying, going, all that we need to reach the world and finish the Great Commission. So it's been helpful for us to think in terms of the belief tree. Have you heard of this idea? There's a way to represent the roots of the tree and the branches and the fruit on the tree. And the fruit on the tree is the actions and the behaviors that flow from actually what we believe in our worldview roots, in our belief systems. And so as we look at the body of Christ today, we can say, wow, there is not the kind of fruit that we need to finish the Great Commission in terms of praying, giving, going, welcoming. All of these things are way far short of what we need. So as missions mobilizers, sometimes we've seen the lack of fruit on the missions fruit on the tree, and we start to get frustrated, maybe even judgmental. But if you actually went to a tree that had a lack of fruit and start shaking it, would that help? No. If you judge the tree, will that produce more fruit? No. Where is the real problem? Well, the problem is in the roots. There is work to be done to nurture those roots, in this case, worldviews and beliefs that in the long run will then let the sap flow and there will be more fruit on the tree. So we as missions mobilizers, yes, when you have a chance to recruit, that's like picking fruit. Great. But in the long run, in the big picture, we're also trying to shift perspectives, shift worldview roots, so that the body of Christ understands what God is up to and what their part in it is, and so that we can see all the time, talent, and treasure we need to finish the Great Commission. Missions mobilization is not just recruitment, it is worldview root shifting so that in the long run there is more missions fruit.
Mentoring missions advocates. This is globalcastresources.com.